somewhere. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. All right, let's stand, let's sing, would you? We'll start. Is the iPad muted? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Well, I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear. At your grace, my fears relieved. How precious dear that grace appeared the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. Yes, the Lord has promised good to me. His word, my hope secures. He will my will and portion be as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, yours ransom me. And like a flood, His mercy, unending love, your amazing grace. Set free. My God, my Savior, you ransom me. And like a flood, your mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. Shall soon dissolve like snow. The sun forbid to shine, but God, who calls will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
Beautiful one. Wonderful, so wonderful is your unfailing love. Your cross has spoken mercy over me. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, my heart could fully know how glorious, how beautiful you are. Oh, beautiful one, I love. You're the beautiful one I adore. Beautiful one, my soul must sing. Powerful, so powerful, your glory fills the skies. Your mighty works displayed for all to see. The beauty of your majesty awakes my heart to sing. How marvelous, how wonderful you are. You're the beautiful one that I love. You're the beautiful one I adore. Beautiful one, my soul must sing.
Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must
Beautiful as you.
Open my arms to the wonders of you. Capture my heart with this love. There's nothing on earth is as beautiful as you. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. My soul must sing. My soul must sing.
My soul must sing. Beautiful one. My soul must sing. My soul must sing. Oh, my soul must sing. You're beautiful one. Every once in a while, they tell you they don't want you to sing no more, so they turn your mic off for you. It actually goes dead. Father, we thank you so much for this time that you've given us. Father, for your love that you've anointed us with and just how much that you really care. God, we know that you are the beautiful one, the one that has saved us, the one that loves us more than anything. God, and so many times, Father, we just have to say that we are so sorry. For God, that we take you for granted. And God, may tonight, Father, may you open up our hearts and everything that we are to our ears to listen to what you have to say. For God, we ask it in thy Son, Jesus' name, and all God's children said, So tonight we're on like lesson number 762 out of the book of John. And we're in John chapter 7, or I'm sorry, John chapter 2. You miss a week, man, and you really miss a whole bunch. We just kind of sped it up a little bit. But we were in John chapter 2, and we had started verse number 23, and was talking about when Jesus was in Jerusalem, again at the Passover. A lot of people were gathered here. They're watching him to do things. And it began to start saying that a lot of the people saw all of the miracles that he had done. And so it's beginning to explain here about how that they believed, or why they believed, in verses 23 to 25. So let's read them again, if you would, and then let's talk about it. It said, while he was in Jerusalem during the Passover festival, it said, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. Jesus, however, would not entrust himself to them, since he knew them all. And then it said, and because he did not need anyone to testify about man, for he himself knew what was in man. So when we were talking about this, we talked about the phrase there where it said that many believed in his name. And the word there where they were using, and the word believed, was there are different tenses of the word believe and different variations of the word believe. For instance, you can believe on something for a very short period of time. Like, for instance, I can believe that it's going to rain tomorrow. And that doesn't mean that it's going to rain. It's just that I can believe for this short period of time that it may rain. But here he was talking about, in the word believe, believing once and for all. No doubt about it. And when it said that many believed in him, he's trying to tell us that there were many of them that believed, but they didn't believe once. And when he was talking about them believing, he said he wouldn't entrust himself to them. And the reason that he would not entrust himself to them was because he knew their belief, that their belief was not a once-for-all belief. They were believing in him because of what they had seen that he had done, the miracles. If you remember, another time is going to come when he is on the mountain and he's delivering a sermon, and they stayed there all day. He fed them because, remember, they only found the little boy with the fishes, with the fish and the bread. His disciples brought them to Jesus. Jesus multiplied them so that everybody that was there, at least 5,000 people were there. He fed them all. And he told his disciples to go around and collect what was left over. And if you remember, they came back with 12 bushels of food, of bread and fish. And so you're talking about a miracle. It's a miracle that you could take those few fish and those few loaves of bread and multiply them into 12 loaves or 12 bushels. But it's in the feast day, in the Jewish tradition, they have different feasts that they have, okay? And the Passover feast was one of the feast days. And it basically was not a day. It basically was a week celebration. Okay? They always had these major feasts for a whole week. Okay? If you want to, we could call it a week revival. And then what would happen is on the last day, which would have been the Sabbath day, it's when they would actually in this one, the Passover feast, that last day is when they would actually offer up the sacrifices for the whole nation. During the first 6 days, the people are coming and going. Okay, they're coming, they're bringing their sacrifices and everything, and they're offering up their sacrifices. They're giving their sacrifices to the priest. Okay, and so you have multitudes of priests in there that are performing this, that would be able to take the sacrifices of the people into the temple, and they would offer up this is the family of so and so's feast or sacrifice, and to God, and then there would be a puff of smoke and all of this saying, okay, yes, God accepted your sacrifice. And they did all of that. But on the last day of the feast was a once-in-a-lifetime event that the high priest would do. And he could only do it once. He could never do it twice. Once he did this, he was done being the high priest. Now he could be a priest and could come and offer up sacrifices for the people individually. But he could never, ever again enter into the Holy of Holies to offer up a sacrifice for all of the people. And that's when they would offer up the lamb for the whole nation of Israel. Okay? And so that's what they were talking about in the feast days. So Jesus is there for this whole celebration. Okay? And while he's there for this whole celebration, he's doing miracles. Remember, he has just now started his missionary journey, or his ministry. Okay, he started. He was baptized there with John. He's moved on, and as he's moving on, his disciples are being selected. He's going into a town. He's teaching in the homes. People are watching, and everything's going on. He's gaining some popularity because he's doing some things. And a lot of people are now hearing, hey, there's this guy that claims to be the Messiah that's doing all kinds of stuff. We're watching him do these miracles, and they're following him. They followed him now into the temple area at the feast of the Passover. So he's here during this period of time, and this is what it's talking about. And so when you look at what he's saying, it says, so they believed. And so it's the same thing that he's talking about for us. And we'll talk about it here in just a minute. There are a lot of people that say that they believe in Jesus, but it's not a once and for all. Some people, it's a temporary. Some people, and I may say, when I say temporary, I mean it could be for a very, very short period of time. Like when they want something, and you'll hear it he gave a parable talking about it. There are others that it may last for a little bit longer until all of a sudden something happens. And then they just, I'm done. I'm finished. That's it. I'm over with it. And then there's this once and for all that you get that says, no matter what, just because I don't get what I prayed for doesn't mean that I quit believing in Jesus. Just because I suffer bad things doesn't mean that he's not listening and that he's not there. Yeah, and this is what I'm saying. This is when he's talking about I'm not going to do it because I know that what you're looking for. What you're looking for is for me to do a miracle. That's the only reason you want to believe in me is because you want to see me do miracles. And he says that's not, because failing to realize that he had already done the miracle. The miracle wasn't turning the food or the fishes and the loaves into an abundance. The miracles that he does is when he changes our lives and gives us life instead of death. That's the miracle. And that is a forever miracle. So when we start looking at this, it said they believe because of the miracles, okay? And so when you begin to look at this, they believe because of the signs, the wonders, and things of this. And this is what we were talking about last week, because in the Bible, it gives us three different definitions of the words miracles or signs, okay? And they could be interdispersed, but they mean certain things, okay? They don't all mean the same thing. And so that's why sometimes when you're looking at the scriptures and looking at how they've interpreted the word, okay, because it's kind of means the same word, but just a variation, but it means something different. For instance, the first one, where the word there was a word that was used, which was teras, T-E-R-A-S, and that was the one we talked about last week. And what that means is something spectacular, something that's staggering. You look at it and it's just like, man, I can't believe this. This is really something wild that I've never, ever seen before, something amazing, something dazzling, okay? And what happened, it says, is that many of them believed the reason that they believed was because of the spectacular thing that Jesus did. Okay? This thing's going in and out. Okay. But what happens is, and in this, is when I'm looking at something spectacular going on and something happening, what happens with that is I become a spectator. Because all I'm doing is just watching this. I'm watching this event occur. It's not really having this dramatic change of life. And so what ends up happening is he says, it basically, the people here were just being nothing but spectators. They're watching him doing these things, but it's like watching a magic show. You know, you pay for it, it happens, and then you walk away. It really hasn't made a huge impact on your life. It doesn't really matter if I see it again in my life. I saw it, pretty cool, and we kind of move on. And this one will kind of relate to, if you would, Luke chapter 8 and verse number 16. Luke chapter 8 and verse number 6, I'm sorry, not 16. Look at what it says. And this is what is kind of the same thing. Other seed fell on the rock. When it grew up, it withered away since it lacked moisture. Remember, he's talking about the seed being sown. And he says that the seed fell upon the rock. And when it fell upon the rock, it couldn't grow because the moisture would hit the rock and it would go away. Now, you hear a lot of times people will say, well, I see trees growing out of the rocks. No, they're growing in the crevices of the rock, not growing out of the rock. Okay, they're growing in the crevice because in the crevice there is the moisture. And so it gives this appearance of growing up out of the rocks, but there's something there that they can get their roots on, not the rock itself. And this is kind of what he's talking about here when it said they saw this, but they didn't believe. He gave this illustration later on. Now, the second thing, talking about the power and the works, is another word that is called dunamis. It's Dunamis, which is where we get our word dynamite. Okay, but in the Greek it's called dunamis. And what this means is you can just use the word explosive power. That's what dynamite is. It's just something that will blow up. And so what happened is there were some who believed Jesus because of the power. And this is the part of the belief that leads to salvation. Because they believe in him because they're watching the power that he's demonstrating. And you think about it. Why did you believe? What made you stick? Why do you believe today? If you believed a long time ago, like I believed when I was 10 years old, now I'm almost 70, but I still believe. And the reason I believe is not because of the miracles, it's because of the power that I know that he's capable of doing. The power that, yes, that he uses to change us. Not necessarily on the outside, because when we get saved, he doesn't change our outward appearance. What he changes is the inside. And that inside will be reflected on the outside. You hear people say, man, there's something different about you. What happened this weekend? Hey, I went to church and I met Jesus. I gave my life to him. Why are you smiling? You don't understand. And they'll say, well, I know you're really going through a hard time. Why are you smiling? You don't understand. He's got it. I know that I may go through hard times. And matter of fact, can I tell you something? I'll guarantee you I'll go through hard times. Because, as Paul says, I count it a privilege to suffer as Christ has suffered. Too many times we want to complain when things are going wrong. And you think about it. When things are going wrong, Satan is doing his best to you, destroy you, get rid of you. He may not be able to take your life, but he takes your witness. And that's what he's trying to do, because if your witness is taken, how many people are going to believe that you're, and they're going to look at it that way. Romans chapter 1 and verse number 16. Romans chapter 1 and verse number 16. And this is where, again, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the dunamis, or the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew and then also to the Greek. So the power here of God for salvation is not a power that is doing works. Okay, these things like a magic show or whatever. It is an explosive power. So what he's doing is placing within you, if I could, dynamite. Remember good times? When JJ would say, would say dynamite. That's, yeah. So that's what Jesus is saying to us. When we get saved, it's dynamite. I'm putting dynamite in you. this explosive power in you that can't be contained. It is going to go off. Have you ever met someone that you were talking to and they say to you, you ask them the question, do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? And they tell you, well, no. So you begin to start having a relationship with this person. You begin to start talking, and they begin to start opening up, and they want to hear more, and they hear more, and they hear more. And the more that they begin to start saying, hey, can you tell me more? How that starts bubbling up inside of you. And then one day, you're talking to them, and they ask you this question, what do I have to do to have this relationship that you're talking about? And then all of a sudden, it's just like the dynamite takes over. It's just like your whole life begins to explode. And it's almost like you can't contain yourself. It's just like, how long have we been waiting for this, you know? It could be a day, a week, it could be months, it could be years. And all of a sudden, it just begins to start exploding and bubbling. And this is where we start talking about the dunamis, or the dynamite that is there. And then the third one is another one that is, the Greek word is called ergon, E-R-G-O-N. And what ergon means, it's talking about very distinctive works. There are certain things that God does that are very distinct. Nobody can imitate it. You get some of these magicians, they have these certain tricks that they patent almost. It's theirs. It's very distinctive, you know, to be able to do. And then you see other people that later on want to try to imitate it after they're dead or gone on, and they want to do this. And that's the same thing even with Christ. There are people today that still want to imitate Christ. But you got to know him in order to understand that it is not him that's doing it, it's they're doing it. And so when you begin to see these things, in John chapter 14, verse number 10, we'll get that one, and then we'll also, if you would, give me 11 also. Okay? Look at what he says. He says, don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I speak to you, I do not speak on my own. What Jesus is saying to them is this: the words that I'm speaking to you are very distinctive. These are not my words. These are the words of the Father. Think about it. How many times have you been talking to someone and all of a sudden you have no clue where all of this conversation is coming from? It's just like, where did that verse come from? I know I've heard it before, but I've never, ever used it this way. I've never spoke it with such power. And this is what Jesus is saying. He's saying, listen, the words that I'm telling you right now, these aren't my words. These are the words of the Father. They are very distinct. He says, the Father who lives in me does his works. In verse 11, he says, believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Otherwise, believe because of the works themselves. He says, if you don't believe that what I'm saying to you is correct. He says, otherwise, okay, just believe in the works themselves. Who's doing these works? He says, I'm not doing the works. The Father's doing the works. He says, when you see this, remember a lot of them even said, we know this has got to be him. This has got to be the Messiah. Because nobody else can do what he's doing. Remember at the age of 12, when he was teaching in the synagogue. Yeah, I mean, we're talking all these adults that have been sitting in the synagogue listening to the priest for years. And all of a sudden, this 12-year-old little boy comes in there, sits down in the middle of them all, and starts opening up the book and starts beginning to read. And what he's reading it is not just words. They're saying, this is amazing. We've never heard anyone speak or teach with such power and authority. It's like, where did this 12-year-old little boy come from? You know, he was a little different than when he came last week. When he was 11 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks old, and now I don't know, maybe it was his birthday present, and he's coming in on his birthday, and he just turned 12, in there. I don't know. John chapter 10, verses 37 and 38. Did we read that one? No. We read 14, 10, and 11, right? Okay. Yeah, so give me John chapter 10, 37 and 38. If I am not doing my Father's works, don't believe me. If you think I'm doing the work of myself or someone else, he says, don't believe me. He says, but I am doing them, and you don't believe me. He says, believe the works. This way you will know and understand that the Father is in me, and I am in the Father. And sometimes people look and say, how in the world can you do this? I can't. He can. And he's doing it through me. It's not what I'm doing, it's what he's doing and doing through me. So one more is another one, and I will not pronounce this one right. It is Semeion, and that's a sign of a character or a characteristic of a certain person, their nature and their character. So you think Semeio. I was never a Greek scholar. Okay, and this one has kind of got a dual purpose with it. Okay, give me John chapter 2. Well, we just did 2:11, right? Give me John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. Because this one, a lot of times, is translated signs. Okay, when you see sometimes with the power and all this stuff, this one is basically where you'll see the word signs, and again, it has dual meaning in it because of two things. The first one, if you remember, it said in 2:11. The beginning of the miracles that Jesus did in Cana of Galilee. They believed in him, but it wasn't a saving faith or saving belief. It was kind of a temporary thing. But here in John chapter 20, verses 30 and 11, it is said, and many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in the book. He said, but these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life through his name. And so when you begin to start seeing this, he says, hey, I need to tell you something. There's a whole lot of other things that he did that it's not even written in the books. And so we give you these so that you'll believe in him. But there's a lot more. We just couldn't write them all down. And you think about it, it's hard enough with just 66 books and trying to understand these 66 books. What if we started with 66 volumes and then trying to understand everything that's in here? You talk about it's hard enough in a lifetime now trying to figure out what this is. We could never even get through it all. And it begins to start talking about this. So when we started looking at this, remember that their faith was not a faith that committed itself. When he said, I'm not committing myself to you because I know what it is. I can read you. And so I'm not committing myself to you because your faith is just a superficial thing. It's not one that's deep, that's changing you. And so what we begin to see is this one, when it's sometimes, a lot of times when it's the translated signs, it's one of those from like either a head knowledge or an intellectual belief. You hear people a lot of times that will tell you that they believe in Jesus, okay? And as far as it goes, it's up here. It never goes anywhere else. It doesn't penetrate them. They'll believe in him as long as, in the other part of it, they believe him for what they can get out of him. You hear these people, these preachers that will tell you, hey, I know you lost your job. You're a Christian. God wants to give you a job. So I'll tell you right now, if you'll come down here, we'll lay hands on you, we'll pray for you, and God's going to give you a job. And so tomorrow, lo and behold, you get a job. And that job only lasts a week. And next week you come back to church and say, hey, yeah, he gave me a job, but it was only lasted a week. Is this really Jesus? And so I'm back here again. So can you go ahead and pray with me again so I can get another job this week? And next week, they get it, they're back again. They're back again. They're back again. They keep coming back, trying to see what it is that they can get out of Jesus. And there are people that do this. It is a temporary thing because they've been told. Again, we were using the verse that, if any two would believe it's touching any one thing, that they could have it. And people will tell you, okay, what do you want? And you hear people that say, okay, and will you pray with me about something? And this is why, nothing personal to anybody, but this is why sometimes when somebody says, I have an unspoken request, will you pray with me? I have a hard time because you're asking me to pray for something I have no clue what you're praying for. Your unspoken request may be that you want to win the lottery and you want me to agree with you on that. And I'm saying, okay, I'll pray with you. Yeah, that's cool. You got an unspoken request. That's why sometimes, I ask people, what am I supposed to be agreeing with? What are we praying about? Because there's a lot of times that you're asking me to pray for something amiss. Yeah. But sometimes they don't want you to pray that. They don't want God's will to be done. They want their will to be done in the request. And so be careful sometimes, because it's not what he's saying. But so anyway, the faith is that it's only trying to get out what they can out of him. And as long as everything's going okay, they're all right. But as soon as things go south, they're done. We're finished. And he says, no, that's not what we want in there, okay? Let's go, verses 24 and 25 out of John chapter 2. And while they're getting John chapter 2, verses 24 and 25, here's the verse that I alluded to before, and just write it down. It's in John chapter 6, verse 26, and you guys don't have to get it. Where Jesus answered them and said, verily, verily, I say unto you, you seek me not because you saw the miracles, but because you did eat of the loaves and were filled. He said, you're looking for me not because of the miracles, you're looking for me because you were hungry and you got food. So you're not coming to see what I can do. You're coming because you're hungry again. And so you want me to do another miracles for you, and that's not what I'm doing. And so that's after the feeding. But John chapter 2, verse 24 and 25, look what he says. Jesus, however, would not entrust himself to them, since he knew them all. And again, and because he did not need anyone to testify about man, for he himself knew what was in man. He didn't have to ask anybody to, okay, this is what they're seeking, or this is what they're looking for. He already knew. Remember when Jesus would come to people, and it said that he would see them and look at them. He would look at them and have compassion on them. He could read the people. And it wasn't a lot of times what they were asking for. It was, he knew what they needed. And understand, God says that he knows what you need even before you ask. Now, some people say, okay, if he knows what I need before I ask, then why do I need to ask? There's a reason you need to ask. Because we need to know, he needs to know, are we lined up together? Because if we're not lined up together, then we're not doing what Jesus said in John. I look to see where the Father is working, and I go join him. That's when you know that you're lined up with him. And when we're lined up with him, then we begin to start looking and seeing what it is that he's asking us to do, and we're going to do it. Okay? So when we begin to look at these verses, and he said that, that he would not commit himself to them, is the very same word, again, as believe. He wouldn't believe, wouldn't commit, because he knew what they were doing and everything. And it's like this. What he's saying is this: I can't trust you. I can't believe in you because I know who you are. I know what you want. Have you ever ran into someone that comes up to you and says, I really want to be your friend? And you look at them and you say, I don't think so. Because I know what you want. I can't trust you. And that's like saying, do you believe in me? I don't know, because I don't know you. But the thing of it is, Jesus says, I can't commit to you. I can't trust you. I can't believe in you because I know what you want. And so when he says I couldn't commit myself, and understand, because again, Jesus knew all men. And you think about it for a minute, all of these people that are watching and everything, Jesus knew something. He knew that he was going to be betrayed. And a lot of times, we put a lot of, I'll finish with this. We put a lot of this on Judas. Remember? Because he said to them when they were eating the feast there, and Jesus is talking to his disciples. That's all that's there, just the 12 and Jesus. There's nobody else in the house. Okay, he's sitting down and he's talking to them, and he says, "One of you this night's going to betray me." And a lot of times we look at this and we say, okay, so Jesus knew this. When Judas came up to him, remember what he said to him? What you've got to do, go do it quickly. Okay? But you got to understand something else. That was in that situation, talking to those group of 12 men that were gathered there as his disciples, and he knew that one of them was going to betray him. Jesus, for 3 years, is walking from town to town, in place to place. These people are all gathered at the feast of the Passover. They're going to gather there every year. Don't you think that Jesus knew at a certain point in time he was going to go to the cross? Now, did he know that it was going to be at the feast of the Passover? I don't know. But I know that God was going to send him. Jesus knew that God was going to send him, because that's why he came here, was to die on a cross. So here he's looking out at the crowd and he's talking to these people. Don't you think that he knew when he said to them, there are some of you that are going to betray me? There's some of you that are in this crowd right now that want to believe in me because of the miracles. But I also know that when it comes that time, there's going to be some of you that are going to be in that crowd that's going to be back in the back saying, crucify him. Crucify him. Think about that for a moment. Every day, for the 3+ years that Jesus is doing his ministry, he is going to come in contact with people that he may be performing miracles over here on somebody, but these other people here are going to be in that crowd crying, crucify him, Crucify him, crucify him. What would you have done? I mean, it's like sometimes it's like, okay, God, give me the strength to heal this person. But why don't you cause this person over here not to be able to go to sleep tonight, because I know they're going to be ones that's going to be crying, crucify me. Not one moment, not one time, I think you ever heard Jesus saying, Father, bring down all of the power of heaven and destroy these people because of what they're going to do to me later. Yeah. And I totally understand that, but I'm not talking about him dying on the cross. I'm talking about as he's walking down each step, getting closer to the cross, knowing that there's a person here or persons here that could be in the crowd that's going to be hollering, crucify me, crucify me, crucify him, or crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And he's up on the cross looking down at this group of people, knowing that guy or that woman or that other person was right there when I fed the 5,000. They were right there when I started the ministry, and I was in the temple performing all the miracles, and they saw that. And they and they say, oh yeah, we believe in you. And he says, no, I know you didn't believe in me because you wouldn't commit yourself to me. What you wanted was this temporary faith so that I would do things. But yet he's always saying and always looking. And the last thing that he said was, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. Exactly, he can't sin. But think about it. That's what he did. And sometimes it's hard. I don't know about you. How many times have you said, this person did something to me, and I'm never, ever going to forgive them until they ask for forgiveness? These people never asked for forgiveness. Jesus automatically forgave them. May I say this to you? Never let anyone control you. They don't have to ask for forgiveness for you to forgive them. Okay? And some people say, well, how can you do that? I know how to do it. You just say, Father, I forgive them. They have no clue what they just did. And you go on. Does that mean that they have to be in your life? No. They don't have to be in your life. But they don't control you anymore. And sometimes, this is what Jesus is trying to say. They don't have any control over me. None whatsoever. I'm not angry with them. I'm not mad at them. Just, Father, forgive them. Because my task is to die. Every time that a lost person dies, he feels sad. Totally understand. Okay? But that's what it is. We are finished for the night. We don't have anything else this week until Sunday. Okay? Sunday we have, Sunday morning we have 9 o'clock breakfast, 9:30 Sunday school, And again, we'll have that. And then Sunday evening, which is the last Sunday of the month during the summer, we'll have a cookout. All we ask is that you bring a covered dish. The church will provide the meat. And then we're just going to have some games and stuff that everybody can play, have a good time, just fellowshipping with each other, talking with each other. No, they don't. There's going to be games that people want to play. We've got cornhole games. We've got some big, huge inflatable darts. We've got lawn darts. We've got some other stuff, if you want to play and do that. If you just want to sit around and talk to each other, not about each other, that's cool. You can do that too, okay? Okay.